name is Martin Muzarag. I'm our regional director for our Košice office, and it is a great pleasure to welcome you all to this very special C-level webinar with Daniel Giebel, the managing director of TSystems Slovakia. Before we start our presentation, a couple of technical guidelines. Please be sure to turn off your video feeds for the duration of the presentation. Make sure to turn off your mics as well, unless you wish to speak or ask questions, which we highly encourage you to do. We will be having a discussion after the official presentation part. Please do know that this also serves as a certain farewell to Daniel, who will be leaving his position as a managing director of Košice TSystems for after 5 active years here. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, Daniel Giebel.
Martin, excellent. Thank you very much. First, like we have this thing where when my kids, they do a lot of the Zoom sessions these days. So usually people say, like, if you can hear me, can you wave? I don't see anybody's video, but like, can you hear me okay? Or?
Okay, yes.
Okay, excellent. Good, perfect. So a few things about myself, we'll also see that in the course of the slide. So my name is Daniel Giebel. I'm the managing director of TSystems Slovakia. Until for the next 4 days, that is. So this is also a little bit of indeed a little bit of a farewell to the work that we've done with AmCham, with the good work we've done at AmCham in the last 4.5, 5 years. For those of you that wonder what I'm going to do next, just to give you an outlook, I will take over as global delivery executive for our customer Shell. So Shell is TSystems' largest customer worldwide, and probably one of the largest in Dutch telecom group as well. So I will take over the responsibility for that account. Something I'm very much looking forward to, because I think I can bring a lot of the things I learned here into it, and something that I am looking very much forward to in particular is working closer with the customer, with a quite substantial customer for us. That is really something I'm quite excited about. Of course, starting a new job in the oil industry now, like one of my counterparts on the Shell side is like phrased it last week, is like, you could not have chosen a better time to join this account. So we'll see how that goes. But I think the current situation also gives us a lot of opportunities. What I would like to spend some 45 minutes on today from my side is some of the personal observations that I had in the last 4.5 years, a bit more than that, plus also like some of the strategic imperatives that I see for this industry going forward here in Slovakia. So that's about 45 minutes. I have a little bit of a track record to not be very good on time, but then we'll have another 45 minutes scheduled for Q&A and discussion in here. And I'm also looking very much forward to that, just to see what you guys are thinking, if the things that I'm seeing, I'm observing, and also the vision I have resonates in the people here. Good. A little bit about ourselves first. So TSystems is Deutsche Telekom's subsidiary, or the Deutsche Telekom's unit for enterprise customers, what we call corporate clients. A little bit more than 6 billion euros in revenues, fair enough of data centers scattered around the world. The largest provider of SAP services worldwide, so we're fairly good in that space. Almost 40,000 employees, and the delivery network that essentially extends from Malaysia and the Far East via India, Slovakia, Hungary, and then Russia into what we call the high-cost countries, so into Western Europe. We have a decidedly European footprint, right? That distinguishes us from some of our American or Indian competitors, but we focus very much on Europe and on large chip or blue chip and large-scale European enterprises. For us in Slovakia, just some of the numbers so that you know, we're around 150 million euros revenue here. which makes us number 14 in Slovakia from a number of employees, and also in the region here in Eastern Slovakia, we're number 2 after US Steel, so a very different industry. We take care of about 700 global accounts, of which the largest indeed is Shell, but there's others. We have a strong footprint also in automotive. So what you find here, you find lots of Volkswagen business, Daimler, BMW, to make it a little bit more tangible. For example, if you drive a Mercedes, then your in-car entertainment and navigation system is operated and managed here from SK. I'll come to that. A few prizes and awards that we're proud about is we became the top employer 2016 and 2018. And also the best shared service center in CEE in CEE in 2017. Today we have 3,960 FTEs, and this is a little bit of an interesting story because we've still not reached the 4,000, and I wonder if we ever do. I've been talking about that for the last 4.5 years, and have not been successful. But I'll come back to that. Here's a little bit of an overview of what we do, what services we offer, and what kind of clients, right? So we start with what we call TC Core. So these are classical TC business where we, example, do a lot for the European Commission or do a lot for BP, another oil and gas customer. But also, for example, for some breweries like Asahi, so the owner of Asharish. We provide their European regional network and things like that. We have a very strong footprint in what we call classic IT. So this is classic infrastructure operations services, where we have the bulk of our people here and also our largest customers. You see some here. Colas, I think, is known also in Slovakia. They own ISK. Daimler, I talked about. Shell is among them. Heineken, for example, is a big one as well. We run quite a bit for infrastructure on the Deutsche Telekom side also. So yeah, that's what we run. We go on the public cloud side. We go more and more into integration. So what we call like multi and hybrid cloud management, where we have more and more of a footprint here, integrating different environments that our customer has, right? You have legacy on-prem all the way through mainframe equipment, and then bridging with workloads that you put into, for example, AWS, Amazon Web Services, or Microsoft Azure, but which you then want to manage from one single operations console. We call it a single pane of glass. So that is something that is really the new things that we are investing into. And then for the CEE region here, we are certainly the biggest location for everything around SAP. We run a number of the largest SAP systems in the world here. So for Continental, for example, which is the largest SAP system, and the second largest is Shell. We do run the largest HANA implementation for Adidas here. So there's particularly in SAP, there's quite a bit of big and heavy lifting that we're doing here out of TSSK. For me personally, I've spent 5 great years here in Košice. I know that it's not Košice, right? Or any funny way of pronouncing it. That's something I learned very early on. Also experiencing the ecosystem here in Košice. And some of you know I have 3 small kids. So they're 7, 4, and 1 now. Keep me, and particularly my wife, particularly busy in these times when there's no school and no kindergarten. And we can really say that we've seen quite a bit of this country. We were hiking, for example, in Friday day off in Podravské Pleso, all the way up to the Šata there and stuff like that. So we've really come to enjoy the life here in Slovakia, where the Tatra is really close by. My kids are really good at skiing now, like they did their first steps in Jahodna. For those of you that are from the region, that's like the little tiny skiing area. That's like 15 minutes from here. And then, to hone their skills, places like Panska Lomnica, Srbské Pleso, also Jasna, that's something then where they really picked it up. So that's where we're really, really enjoying our time here. I've done some work, so that's one of my key takeaways, the power of storytelling, because from my first presentation on here in TSSK, I told people about my garden. And I recognize that even if people don't remember anything of my presentation, they all remember my garden. So maybe that's a cultural insight or generally an insight over how to build a presentation. The garden everybody remembers, and the statements connected with the garden. That's something that really sticks in people's minds. So that's quite cool. I'm not gone out of Košice yet, so I'll certainly, even in the new role, stay here until the summer. That was the original plan. And as we discussed earlier, that might go on because we have no clue when we actually, we're on the same boat here. No clue when we actually get out of here. So it might be that I stay here even like a year longer, which in my new job is not really an issue because the team essentially is distributed from Malaysia, India, Slovakia, Hungary, Netherlands, UK, US. So that's quite a range. Generally, my plan is at some point to relocate to the Netherlands, to The Hague, because that's where the customer is sitting. So that's a little bit about myself. And here, you see, I put that. I had this dream that I started with. We're going to make the 4,000 mark, but in the last 4.5 years, we didn't. So the champagne is still waiting, and I stopped talking about it just to not make a fool of myself, because I pronounce every year that, hey, this year we're finally going to make it. Good. So this is a little bit of the prelude. Let's delve into the subject matter then. I would first like to give an overview of where we are with BSCs, and what I want to share with you from the very beginning is, I'm not going to put you at suspense, but I want to share the conclusion ahead, because I think it's important to, or it brings you in a certain mindset to understand where I want to lead. So I'm going to show you that the achievements that we have in the BSC sector in Slovakia is very remarkable. Quite a very good piece of work that's been done by the teams here, the companies here, the people here. That's really, that's quite impressive, and that's something we can be proud of. However, we will need a different view and a different perspective if we want to be equally successful into the future, because there's a few things that don't necessarily work in our favor. There are a few things that are, but a few pretty heavy ones that are currently built in our business models that don't necessarily work in our favor. And my remedy for this, the one that I see, is that we need to make what I call a bold step towards product innovation. Product innovation and innovation capacity. So this needs to be centered around products rather than if you look at it like an agency model, where you essentially provide people with skills, right? So I think that's what we need to shift into a product mode. And the second one is we need to build innovation capacity. So this is essentially both resources and skilled resources. That's one, but also the right attitude and the right skills to create an innovative environment. And that also has some requirements towards the legislatory environment, towards the environment that we live in and that we work in, right? So that's where we're heading. So where do we stand today? So this is a little bit of the growth that we've seen. You see from an employment point of view, and I hope I'm not missing your respective logo on here. We collected some of them that we saw. In the last 10 years, the number of people in the business service centers have tripled, which is really good news, because I think this adds to diversifying the economy here. And not everybody necessarily sees it like that. I will come back to that, but I think it's a really good step because it's largely future oriented, clean jobs that give a perspective in also industries with a future perspective. What you can also see here is that the turnover, and that's a little bit where the problem starts to get visible. So you see that the number of employees have tripled, but the turnover has only doubled. So if you look at, I don't have it, I don't know from the top of my mind like what the average salary costs are in your specific service center. For us, it's about 81%. So 81% of our costs are staff costs. So you can see then with the number of employees tripling and the turnover only doubling, that the average salary that we're paying does not keep track. So that's the first piece, that or the first kind of alarming piece with all the good news here, that the salary, and that's you can largely use that as a proxy for the value add that the people in the service centers deliver, that has not tripled, right? So that's one of the things we need to come back to. They add a very significant value add, like unlike industry or trade where 15%-ish of money stays in the country. We did some analysis. For TSystems here, that about 80% of the value add stays in country, right? So, and this is essentially money that is directly added to the economy here. That's money that's directly added, that people can build houses for here. They can do consumption here. It's not something that leaves the economy. For example, like in trade, if you look at Billa as one example, they have much more revenue contribution, but very little of that money stays in country because they essentially buy their goods somewhere outside, so it leaves the country again. That's very different from shared service system, where it's much higher. As I said, we did the detailed, Martin Bohr and his team was on the call. They did the detailed analysis on this. And Martin told me that we are up there really at the top with players. We're a little bit surprised if we looked into it, like Tipsport or Nikkei, right? Nike, like the betting agencies. So that's why we're up there. Very different business model, but very similar value add. And that's good, because it means that money staying in the country means that the quality of life ultimately is increasing because it's reinvested in the country and it drives the local economy forward and adds into the local economy. You can see that, I think, also here in Košice. One of my favorite examples for that is like last year, everybody was complaining about all the road works that was happening. Like, they closed Alejova, which is like a big roundabout here, about a kilometer from here where I'm sitting now, and everybody was complaining, oh, it's so difficult and parking is gone and stuff. I said, like, guys, this is a sign for a healthy economy because the government obviously has money to invest into infrastructure, which is really good. The second piece, and that's, I think, another important example why this is I think a good future industry to be in, is that we do all of this with a very limited environmental impact, right? And like, I need to be a little bit careful here because I know that US Steel, for example, is a large contributor also to AmCham. At the same time, if you look at the emission footprint and particularly the CO2 footprint that you have on a yearly basis per employee in manufacturing versus in services, you can see that, yes, the world will continue to need steel, no questions asked there. But from an environmental footprint, business service centers are much, much better for the economy than other parts of heavy or manufacturing industries. So that's in my view, quite an impressive. And you can see here, in fact, that particularly for the emissions in the business service centers, it even goes down. And this is down to more energy efficient buildings, more energy efficient economies, things like that, right? So this is really a good thing and a clean economy to be. And that's why I think it's good for us to be in there, and something that's worthwhile us to invest into in a place like Slovakia. If we look at it, so this is something that we went through with the Vienna Institute for Economy, and for me this was really interesting to see in a lecture that they held 2 weeks ago together with the German-Slovak Chamber of Commerce. And what they essentially looked at was the relative functional specialization per area in different countries. And I would like to put your attention to the right side of the picture first. So if you look into the economies that are at a higher GDP per capita, let's put it that way. I was about to call them prospering economies, but that's a question mark. You see that it's a very different setup. They have a lot of specialization in HQ, in R&D, then parts and logistics, and in support services. Well, for Slovakia, it's actually the other way around. So it's like kind of an inverted smile, we called it, Martin and me, when we discussed this. So I think that Business Shared Service Center can actually play a major role in becoming more like what we call the EU 17, so the prospering economies, because in my view, production eventually is probably not the future of everything. And if you look at some of the industries that Slovakia is particularly strong in the automotive industry in particular, there's big change coming there. The question is like, what impact is that going to change? What impact is that change going to have on the manufacturers here? One thing is for sure, it will have some. If you look at a gearbox that needs, I don't know, 3.5 times as many parts as an electric engine needs, I think it was something like those numbers, then you wonder, okay, you know, like what's that going to do to manufacturing? And that's, I think, where support services that we're driving here can diversify the industry, the economy, and can play a major role in making it more even balanced. And you see that during Corona now. You know, we have that discussion in-house quite often. While Volkswagen sends its people home for like 6 weeks or whatever, and they need to live on 60% of their salary, and that's even worse in some of the automotive suppliers. Our people, yes, they're also at home office, but they're fully paid, right? Because we can continue to deliver our services. So that also insulates an economy towards some of the shocks that we see, both from a macroeconomic level, but also for entirely unpredicted things like Corona or like a pandemic. So, and that's where, as I said, business service centers play a major role. Let's take a look at what matters, and this is a little bit of the flip side, right? So here here I'm going to share less statistics with you and less hard numbers that you can find like with Eurostat or with the National Statistics Office or something like that. But here I want to discuss or share some of my observations, my initial observations. Some of them are anecdotal, not all of them are empiric. But things that I see which are important for us and which are important going forward, in my view. So one is that particularly for transactional work, it's quite easily moved, right? So if you look at this place, I'm sure you all know what this is, and I think this is a very early morning shot because this is done, I think, a year or two ago. When you see Charles Bridge that empty, I think now it looks like that as well, but that's for other regions. But in Prague, for example, Prague has been IT outsourcing hotspot since the 1990s. And we can see that as that cost advantage started eroding, that the classic outsourcing has gone further east, right? And that is, we can see that because Košice in particular benefited from some of that. But we've also seen some of that going considerably further east to Romania, if it had to be in the European Union, or to India or places like this, you know. So particularly for the transactional work, there's probably always somebody there where the labor costs are lower and that can do it. So what happens if the mass market outsourcing leaves your region, your country? Admittedly, Prague is probably both an example for the exodus of transactional outsourcing, and at the same time also a region that has prospered in the aftermath. So I think there are a few lessons to be learned here. So that's one of the examples to look at, and some of the examples we need to be cognizant of and very careful of, because that can easily also happen to us in Slovakia, any of the regions here, and it is happening to some degree already. We can see it. So we can see it here, and I know in Bratislava, in the Bratislava region, we can see it as well, right? So looking at what that does, so that's one thing to keep in mind, one observation. The transactional work is very easily moved for organizations. But also, if we look at the company side, if you look at the workforce side, then the workforce, particularly the skilled workforce, is also highly mobile, right? And like I want to take you through an example here where we try to work on that, and like right now, I think we have to say we failed. So this is what we call the Halushki campaign. The Halushki campaign is something that we ran 3.5 years ago now in Prague and in Brno. And essentially, we targeted Slovak IT expats, particularly Slovak Eastern Slovakians, by offering them free halushki and bringing it to their workplace, right? So the thinking here went that, yeah, Eastern Slovaks are like their halushki. They probably like a free portion of halushki for lunch. And then you can see the box here in the middle. We put like a job ad essentially for TSystems and for the Košice region into the packaging. So we went exactly onto people's desks in Accenture, in IBM, in DPDHL, those places, targeting Slovaks and Eastern Slovaks in particular, tell them like, you know, here's a great meal from home, come and join us. And this thing won us lots of prizes, a number of prizes for the creativity, and I think it is quite creative. From a results point of view, as you can see here, not really that great. Why do I tell you this story? Because for me, this proves that, yeah, we're very creative here, but at the same time, our workforce, the workforce that we're targeting for, particularly the high-skilled workers, and this was IT, but this goes for other areas as well, they are highly mobile, and they choose where to work, right? And if the infrastructure, if the environment is not right, then they will just go somewhere else. So, and then you don't get them back with halushki or anything else. So, so that's what we also need to invest into, and we'll come to that, into an infrastructure, into legislation, things like that, that makes this an attractive place to live. And that's where it's, and I need to talk about it because it is an attractive place to live, but we need to talk about it. Yeah. So, and this is, the next two slides are kind of the key slides of my observation. Because I want to start with the labor rate changes in the local economy that we see, right? And here, this industry is very much built on what we call a labor cost differential. Labor cost differential, essentially, as you know, or as you might be familiar to, is the difference between the labor cost here, the total labor cost, compared to total labor cost in what we call high-cost countries. And this is something where, with the salary, the salary increases here, and the salary growth here, that gap is slowly closing. We're not fully there yet, of course, but it's closing, and it's closing quite quickly, I have to say. And that's good news. You know, sometimes people say like, why do you say that and you rub it in so much and stuff? No, I think that's good news because it means, talked about the example here in Aleova where the government is building, you know, it means that the quality of life is increasing, that the infrastructure is increasing or improving, that people ultimately have more money to spend. At the same time, it's a real risk for our for the business model that we built upon, that we built our business service centers upon, because a lot of them today, and that includes TSystems very much, are built upon this predicament of the labor rate differential. And this is really, for me, the key slide strategically to understand what's happening and what the future might hold. So if we look at this on the left side for the past, you can see that in the past we delivered value add to the global organizations that we support through lower cost, right? Through the labor rate that through a lower labor rate, where then these organizations, global organizations, would save money, and because of that, could offer their products for a more competitive price. I mean, that's ultimately what the past is built upon. So what this means, with the labor rate advantage, almost half of what it was 10 years ago, right? Or only half of what it was 10 years ago, we need to find new ways of adding value to the global organizations that we worked for. And here you can see that, in my view, that added value needs to be, or will be, less and less on the cost side, so less and less through lower labor rates, less and less through cheaper products, and increasingly through customer proximity This is very much an understanding. This is very much something I think where we have an advantage over places like India or places like China or Vietnam, because this is a 4-hour flight from Košice, from Bratislava is even closer. A 4-hour flight into Western Europe, where a lot of our clients sit today. It's culturally, it's much closer. You don't need a visa to go. You can go tomorrow morning. Assume there are planes. So it's things like that where we have an advantage, and that we need to capitalize on much more going into the future, because again, the strategic imperative that we originally built this industry on in this country is eroding, is going away. It has eroded half in the last 10 years, and there's no indication that this is going to slow anytime soon, right? And that is where we need to find new ways of working, where we need to find new ways of adding value to our global organizations. And my view very much is that this is around customer proximity, is around innovation. So that's some of my insights and my observations here. And this is essentially to make sure work does not, or work that we want to keep does not move further east. But it also makes sure that we have a workforce here in the long run that's happy to work here, right? So that was the first two observations that I had. So looking a little bit about strategic levers for going forward. And again, guys, this is very much my opinions. These are my opinions. These are my observations after my time here. After my time here working with the organization here, with customers like Shell, with customers like Volkswagen, like Heineken, but also with the Business Service Center Forum that we run in AmCham, which I think is an excellent opportunity to exchange insights. So that's where Peter and also AmCham with Gabi in the front and Ronald, but you've done a good job, I think, an excellent job, in fact, in bringing the industry together and and you've been very formative, in my opinion, as well, in talking to people and allowing those platforms for exchange, which I think is important going forward. So, let me take a sip of tea here. For me, the levers for success of Slovakia's business service centers are 4. The first one is attractivity, and with that I mean how attractive is it actually to work in a place like Bratislava, to work in a place like Košice, to work in a place like, we see them coming up in Žilina and those places in central Slovakia as well, increasingly. That is with more and higher value work coming here. We need more experts coming here, also more international experts for that matter, by the way. And there's the big question: how good is the quality of life? How good is the schooling? That's something that's been on my top of my list for a long time. And Martin and Ronald and those guys have been supporting me in that, and really pushing that here in the region. But it's also around how easy is it for foreigners to enter a country? How long does it take, right? How much help do they get? But also things like childcare or work for partners, for example. If you have people coming back from Czech Republic, for example, it's very important that not only the person that works in a business service center has work or one part of a partnership, but also to offer the other part, as these people usually come into in pairs and usually with kids these days, right? You need to have the infrastructure in place. Then the second piece is about specialization. And I think that is where we need to build an ecosystem that goes rather more deep than wide. So my advice here is to go deep rather than wide, and really focus on some specific areas, that we want to focus on, because we think it's I personally think we can't be, it's a term I learned coming here very early, the Esmesters, right? The jack of all trades. That doesn't really work. We need to start building specific knowledge, specific critical mass in specific industries, and in specific technologies and services as well. Because as a small country like this, we can't have the space like India or even like Romania, because in Romania we have 7 times the number of people, stuff like that, right? So for us, it's more important, I think, to specialize in going deep than cover as much as possible. The third one is I call this stickiness. And we had like Martin and me, we discussed like, what are we going to call this? Is it like competitive advantage? Is it niche skills, stuff like that? But that didn't really cut it. So we decided on stickiness. What makes companies stay here, right? What prevents them from moving low-cost transactional labor that you can easily train in 1 month or 3 months, and which is easily moved? How can we build competences here, as I said, that are sticky, that make organizations stay here? And then last but not least is the availability of resources. I'll share with you demographics in a sec, which is going to be a real challenge here, right? Particularly with any immigration or any migration for that matter, to talk about, at least at this stage. So the availability of resources, of educated resources, that's also going to be an important lever, I think, for us going forward. So if you look at this, let's look at what I call the current king. What do I mean with that? This is very much what the industry is built around today, right? Essentially, the availability of resources. In TSSK, we call this the agency model. So, because a lot of what we do today is essentially just like a staffing agency, we have people with skills that we supply to companies, usually in Western Europe, but like around the world, really. So we supply people with skills, and that's what we call the agency model. So that essentially is resources. They don't have to be like super highly skilled, to be honest, in a lot of cases, because a lot of what we do, we call them into farms or boot camps or whatever you want, or academies or whatever it's called in your organization, right? And we train them for what we need, and then we get there. And this has a double whammy for us, because the demand for IT resources is going up, that's number one. But at the same time, based on the demographics that we see, the number of graduates from Slovak universities in the next 10 years is pretty much going to half, right? So this is a big impact for us, and a big impact, I think, where we need to work together to make sure that we work together with universities, with schools, and things like that to bring people into our industries, because this will be a war for talent. Whether somebody goes to an assembly line for JLR, right, or whether somebody joins us as a shared service centers or business service centers. And I think from a skill set point of view, it's going to be very different. So that's why we need to work very closely that we teach skills in university and in secondary schools that are relevant for us for what we need, but also that we plug what we call the education gap, and we'll come to that in a sec, right? So that's the current king. The future king for me is innovation capability. And what do I mean with that? I think here you have a really nice example from from Slovakia, right? So this is the Aeromobile, I understand, and the guy in front of it is Stefan Klein. I guess he also does some design work at the university in Bratislava. And that's an interesting example for innovation capability, because it brings together education with the capability and the attitude to innovate. And that's what I mean with innovation capability and innovation capacity, because you need to find the right people with the right attitude and the right education, and enough of them. And here you can see that within the European Union, we've gone around and compared a little bit where we stand in Slovakia versus countries with a similar size. Not necessarily similar structure, you can see that, but a similar size. What is it? Slovakia was 5.4, Croatia just under 5, I think, Finland 5.5, so that's very close. and Ireland, I think, also around 5-ish, something like that. So they are similar. They are similar size. Croatia only one with smaller. I think it's 4 actually. You look at the STEM graduates. So STEM is science, technology, engineering, and math, where the number here is lower, a good bit lower than in other countries. If you look at the number of patents, admittedly, very different starting points, right? But if you see the comparison to Finland, for example, it's stark. It's tremendous, and you also see that in the startup scene. And that's what I mean with innovation capability. That's, I think, where we, as business service centers, as organizations here, we also need to invest into and to drive. And particularly Finland, I think, holds a number of interesting examples there, because it's a country that has essentially emerged from a largely forest-based pulp and paper kind of country in the 60s and 70s into very much a technology-driven country. That didn't happen overnight, but it happened over time, right? And see where they stand now. And when the Finnish ambassador opened the consulate general here in Košice a few years ago, she held a quite remarkable speech, in my view, because she also compared, Finland size-wise very similar to Slovakia. And she said that the Finnish success is built on 2 things. It's built on education and equality, right? And that is something I think that holds a few lessons for the country here as well. And there we cannot expect the government to pick it all up immediately. That is something where we also need to invest as organizations, right? So it's something to keep in focus on. And you can see here, you can see here that also from a value add point of view, I think we need to start focusing on different things. Currently, we are very much on the persona, we call him métier, right? An accounts payable specialist, and a very technically savvy maintainer, right? But that does quite a number of repetitive tasks these days, and which are going to, particularly this area, is going to be very subject to automation in the very near future, right? Because a lot of the tasks that Mathieu does today, while these still are transactional, are manual, they will give it like 5 to 10 years. They will be automated. That's very different for Renata, right? And she's a business intelligence product manager, much more innovating, much more product than process oriented. She does lack a technical depth in parts, and there's also, I think, a potentially generational issue with thinly spread interest and attention, which you need to focus every now and then. But by getting her closer to the customer, where I think we have a good situation in this country, because we are also physically and culturally quite close to the customer, based on the existing services that we deliver today, the basis of services that we deliver today, we have a great vantage point to make the move from somebody that does transactional work into somebody that's specialized on a product in the same area, and namely in business intelligence, right? And you see from an hourly rate that this is something that will sustain the growth of the shared service centers into the future, and which will make them relevant into the future as well. Because if Renata, with her product knowledge, is happy here in Košice, she's not easily going to be moved, and her work, her skill set, her insight, that's not easily going to be moved either. And that's what I mean with creating stickiness, because this is work that cannot be easily moved. One of the things we need to drive is legislative environment, and we can all, I think we all have a few stories to tell on that. However, our observation is that you can make some of the challenges that the regulatory environment throws at you, and as I said, we can all tell a story or two around travel vouchers or like hikes and like increases, sudden increases in the weekend charges and things like that. You can overcome that by a very strong culture, right? A culture that focuses on innovating the way that we work, that brings agile in, and also that brings new learning, new ways of learning in, that overcomes some of the frustration that some of our staff experiences when we push through or put through some of the legislatory changes that we have and that are probably meant for a different sector than ours. But that's where we very much see that culture hacking is something where we have found a good way and a good focus on overcoming some of the changes, making it a better place to work and showing appreciation to our employees. So I'm coming to an end now. So as I said, the strategic opportunities that I see, this builds upon a conversation that I had with State Secretary Hornet probably half a year ago, when he was still a person that I really appreciate. And we were talking a little about specialization. We were talking a little bit about diversification as well. And his point was, or my point was, that Slovakia as a country is very much exposed to the automotive or the manufacturing sector. And his view was, well, yeah, but like we had to be a small country. We had to choose one. And this was automotive, so one that's like too big to fail. And I think there's some logic in that. At the same time, I think that we as business service centers, we can really add diversification here. Diversification for the industry, in a revenue stream, in a GDP stream, in a skill set stream, because not everybody wants to work on an assembly line, or in mechanical engineering. But also in regards to diversification of risk when it comes to crises and stuff like that, And again, we see that right now. So, and I think that's where the business service sector is in an excellent position to actually do that and drive that. And this is something that I think also we need to be more vocal about politically, right? To make sure that the understanding is there. Yes, focus on one industry, too big to fail and stuff makes sense, but you will need some diversification as well, and that's where business service centers is a good partner. The second strategic opportunity that I see is specialization, and this is exactly those things about going deep rather than going wide. And one of the points here that I find where we can do more and where we need to do more is around customer-centric innovation. Customer centricity here means for me that we build what we do around customers. Today, we are very much in the business service centers, or in large parts of it. It's a large industry, so got to be careful here. But we are very much focused on process rather than on customer. And I think that's something that we need to change, because if we want to go from this line of unmet customer needs through consulting, prototyping, and then actually implementing, rolling out and delivering, and then fine-tuning and improving, that is something where we need to put the customer more in the center. And this, I know, this has been, for me, a very long and very painful journey here in TSSK, I have to say. That was hard. Because the organization here, before I came here, certainly has been driven very much by process adherence, right? So you maintain a process, and you do that in the right quality and properly and in the right time, and not so much with a customer in focus. And changing that perception, I think, or for me, and also for the organization here working with me on this, was really hard. But I strongly believe if we want to shed our dependence on labor rates arbitrage, then we need to put the clients, the customer, more into the center of what we do. And we need to build that into products that we build from here, from Slovakia, where we start with the customer's need, we do the consulting, we do prototyping, and then we implement, we roll out and deliver. And that is something you cannot move. You saw this inverted smile. That is really what it's all about, that is like understanding what your customer wants, defining, implementing, delivering, and then fine-tuning. That is something that where labor rate arbitrage is in the background, because the revenue potential of that is so high that organizations are not going to move that. So that is, in my view, a strategic opportunity in our sector. Good. Little bit about our mission in this, and these are examples for creating an environment, because I think that's also an imperative that we need to take. I think in our industry, we need to do more around bootstrapping. That means to build a community, to support the startup scenes, but also to do mentoring and stuff like that, consulting, also with experts from our global organizations for the ecosystem that's here. To give you some examples about that we do here in Eastern Slovakia, here in Košice, there's the Innovlab, so the startup center that we've built, but also some of the hackathons that we do. So Gabi and his team do an AT&T hackathon. We do one with TSystems. And then last but not least, also to give the ecosystem here, to build that ecosystem, access into your clients. You know, that is something where we are working with the tech incubator of Deutsche Telekom, for example. That's an organization called Hubraum, that they get access into Deutsche Telekom's clients to launch their products, right? So where we open up our customer space, and this is something to be important. That's very important for organizations here in the region, because they have a reach. Our global organizations have a reach that somebody that has developed an exciting product here can only dream of. Almost last slide. Plug the education gap. You know that education is something that certainly we here in TSystems, we are extremely passionate about. And this is something where I would like to also push everybody here a little bit. It's something that costs money, doesn't come for free, but it's something that I think where we do something for society for once, but also we do one for our business. So, you know, lack of teachers is an issue here, and if it's not lack of teachers, then lack of teachers with knowledge of contemporary items and up-to-date knowledge. So that's where internal trainers help, and we also bring them out to the schools, right? And low-hanging fruit also with the lack of STEM graduates, IT farms. But going forward, and I think that's where we need to be more and more active in what I call plugging the education gap, is I would encourage you to go more, everybody here to go more for dual education. So this is essentially a 3-year vocational education that we have had extremely good experience with in TSSK, because it essentially educates young people, gives them a future in this region, and it gives them the skills that we exactly need in this organization. Then work with them in their master's thesis, and last but not least, also make sure that the universities thrive through R&D grants. Good. And this is my last slide. It's coming back to the conclusion. I think we've done a lot here, but we need to make a bold step towards product innovation, towards building ecosystems, towards making this an attractive place to live, and to create stickiness that global organizations actually stay here, right? So that's my conclusion. Good. Thank you from my side. I would like to also do some acknowledgements here. First of all, I think a big thank you goes to Martin Spoor, who's been absolutely a big help in putting this together, and he's contributed a lot of the ideas that I could discuss with him, and the data and the slides and stuff like that. So big thank you to Martin, who's also on the call here. But I also would like to thank the board of management and the board of directors here in TSystems Slovakia for great work together with me, and for the passion that I've experienced with the employees here in TSSK. That was always that's always great to work with the people here. Yeah, absolutely. Good. That's it from my side. A little bit longer than expected, about 10 minutes. But yeah, let's delve into questions if there are any.
Thank you very much, Daniel. That was very inspiring and very helpful. Also, a lot of useful information, which we already discussed with Peter. We would love to use in the future in our efforts supporting VSEs in Slovakia. Also, a very nice call to action, and we, as AmCham Slovakia, are always, as always, prepared to lend our hand and do our part in making this sector better and more efficient. So thank you. Maybe a question from my part also. Please be encouraged to write any of your possible questions in this WebEx chat, or just feel free to ask away with your microphones and your video feeds. Maybe a question from my side for the beginning, Daniel. As of course we see and have seen in the last 15 years the rise of IT and SSCs and DSCs here in the region of Eastern Slovakia, especially in Košice, have done lots for the local economy and have basically changed the way of life and the culture here. So we of course view it as extremely important and would like to know your view on how might it continue in the future. So what is the future of DSCs here?
Sure. So I think if you look at economic policy, then it's really exciting for me what has happened in Eastern Slovakia in particular, and because you see development from heavy industry, steel, right, in particular, to a fairly clean industry with a good footprint, future-proof, all that stuff. So I don't have the exact number, but I think in the beginning of the year, the IT industry here had 13,000 staff. So that's more than US Steel has today. And that number was very different if you look at 10 years ago, right? So that's a really good example for economic policy change. And I'm really happy that that has worked here so far. At the same time, I think the industry here now is a little bit of a turning point, because it's very clear that the growth or any future growth will not come from employing more people here, or at least not more local people. Because if you look at the labor market here, and particularly in the areas that we are looking in the IT industry, it's empty, right? It's empty in people, it's empty in skills. So everybody that has highly valuable skills, they are in work somewhere. So that is where we need to be a lot more active and a lot more successful also, to be honest, to bring in people from the outside. And given the fact that you probably won't find these in Košický kraj and Prešovský kraj anymore, you will need to go beyond that. That is obviously, neighboring countries like Ukraine is always one. That's talked about, Northern Hungary, Southern Poland, stuff like that. There you might still find some talent also to bring in. But I think we need also to broaden our mind and broaden our scope to bring more people, and particularly experts from, we call them third countries in here, right? From outside the European Union, to bring in expertise into this region, to build, I call them crystallization points, to build product-specific or technology-specific knowledge around. And I think it will be very crucial for the future of the IT industry, of the business service center industry here into this region, to be successful, to continue to be successful into the future and grow in the future. Yeah.
So this being said, and being a barrier, let's say, in the attractivity of the region, how do you view Eastern Slovakia right now for potential future investments? We of course know that the talent pool has been largely used up, let's say, and were necessary steps taken in order to make the region more attractive towards investments in your sector? Is it still an attractive place to invest in right now?
So you can, I would say yes, and that's by evidence, right? So if you look at it, we still have organizations coming here, IT organizations coming here. So fairly recent arrivals include Diebold, for example, Diebold Nixdorf, include Visma, include Cancom, who's now come here. So apparently it is still attractive to invest here. And like one of my first questions, and I think that comes back to my answer, one of my first questions that I got here when we started here, when I think Freudenberg IT was the company that come here, is like, Daniel, aren't you afraid of more organizations coming here? Because they will start fishing for your employees, and particularly your best employees. And And that's true. It's always stressful when I come here, at least initially. But I know now that with the team here, we can do it. And my expectation is with more and more organizations investing here, we will create more of that ecosystem, more and more of that critical mass, where we have experts coming in also from the outside, where it's attractive for experts from the outside coming in to work here. So from that point of view, yes, I think it is still attractive. Yes, we can do more, but there are still organizations coming here, yes.
Thank you. Was there a question from Milos?
No.
Okay.
No.
Just a breath then. Okay, very good. Yeah, we have two questions from the audience at this point. The one from Ernest Salter from CSI Leasing, and that is not only in the name of CSI but also AmCham. Thank you, Daniel, for participating in the mentor network program for university students. We still are looking for transformation of this program to be more sexy for the students. Do you have any suggestions in this particular field?
So I don't know, understand. I think we talked about this, right? Like I have a little bit of an ambiguous relationship with this program. I think it's absolutely great doing it. Don't get me wrong. It's a great thing. I'm doing it for the third year now. And my first 2 years, I think I told you that. I'll tell it to everybody else as well. You know, the students that elected me, they came once and then never showed up again. And that kind of made me thinking, like, did I do something wrong, or I really didn't get it. But now with the third time right, it's a very productive relationship with a young gentleman also working in the IT industry. So I have some good insights for him, I think. So now I think I kind of got more into it the third time around. For the program, I think you have this thing where you emphasize that that the people or that the students can have one meeting with their mentor. And I would make this a little bit I would not hammer down on this that much anymore, because I think like doing a retrospective, I think this was kind of the problem during the first two times, that they thought this is only for once and then they're out. But emphasize more that this is something that you can, if you want to, you don't have to, but if you want to, you can build a long-term relationship on it. And I think that's also what a lot of mentors are up for, I would guess, judging from me and also talking to some of the others, that, this is not only for one time. We're happy to do it for longer and as long as it's there. So that's where I would build more on the long-term relationship rather than this one time. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Daniel. Peter, our BSEF coordinator.
Thank you very much, Daniel, also from my side on behalf of the entire community of the BSEF for being a great partner and being a great supporter of the whole industry over the entire time you have spent in Slovakia. We definitely highly appreciate your involvement in making the BSEF community stronger and visible in the country. I am proud to know that the entire sector has developed into the third largest industry in Slovakia after automobile and electrotechnical industry. Let me please get back to what you shared on the gap on the labor market, especially in the connection with foreigners. The BSE sector is well renowned in the whole of Slovakia for employing quite a number of foreigners, even though the data show approximately 9% of the entire full-time employees in Slovakia are foreigners. So not that much, a lot of people coming from countries outside Slovakia. But I'm wondering if you expect this number to grow in the years to come, given the fact that we will be getting less graduates from universities, less workforce from Slovak labor market. So I'm wondering where do you see the potential of the labor market to absorb more foreigners from countries outside Slovakia?
Okay, so let me put that a little bit into perspective, the 9%, because where I do see that, and again, this is not empiric, right? I don't have this is an observation, and if you want to put numbers against it, it's probably worthwhile doing. But where these 9% comes from is very much in the transactional work, in my view. If you have a service center here that does accounts payable, like we have in Košice, for, I don't know, for Germany, for France, for Spain, and for the UK, then you also have some people from Germany, from France, from Spain, and from the UK there. But this usually is fairly low added value. That's fairly low added value. Where you see a lot less foreigners is, for example, if I take the IT sector, just, this is an area that I know a lot about. In the higher value jobs, you see very little foreigners. So in TSSK, we have under 1%, which is terrible. So it's very different in the different industries. And generally, I think the opportunity that we need to grab is to bring more experts, more foreign experts in, because given being this a small country, and looking also at the demographics, the likelihood that we will get those experts or that we will grow these experts at home is fairly limited. It takes too long. So bringing people in from India that have worked with cutting edge technology, whether it's, I don't know, public cloud for us or automation in some other transactional service centers, and that help us to build a team around them, to teach them, and this is what I mean with crystallization points, that builds more knowledge here. That is more where I see the future, and I think that's where we need to be more active and more attractive.
Understand. So you see there's an inevitable step on the way forward.
Yes.
For the entire industry to thrive.
Yes, and that's fairly short term, right? Because we are we are at an inflection point now where a lot of the transactional services that we deliver, whether it's IT or non-IT for that matter, where they are automated, and we have a choice now of playing a major role in this automation, or not, right? And then the jobs are gone. And if we don't bring we don't have 10 years to grow expertise in automation. We need people. We need to bring in people now that know about automation, as one example, right? That can teach our people on a fast track, and then we're good. Right.
Understand. Thank you for the answer, Daniel. Maybe one more thing that is coming to my mind in this regard. If I see the whole map of Slovakia and the entire ecosystem for shared services, in the last maybe 5 to 7 years, you see the growth of shared services popping up as I would say, as a logical step for those companies who have been operating their manufacturing plants in Slovakia. We can mention, Peugeot in Trnava, the plant. They have been operating, let's say, for 10 years, producing cars in Trnava, and after that, the management in France decided also to open up a shared service center in Slovakia because the plant proves to be a great investing decision, and Slovakia proves to be a good country to place the SSCs, and we could continue maybe with Ostram, Nitra, Embraco, Spišská Malec, Košice, and so on and so forth. So this is the trend that we have been seeing over the last 5 to 7 years. Do you expect that such a trend to continue, or maybe you can imagine let's say like a huge investor compared to the size of TSSK coming to Slovakia and opening their gates?
So let's take two questions. So the first one is, I think the move from a manufacturing side to a business service center side is a good one, and it's something we need to drive. And I don't find it surprising, because if you look at the work ethic here in Slovakia, if we look at the cultural aspects here and things like that, this is a very good place to be. You have very hardworking, honest, loyal people. So that's why I'm not surprised that manufacturing companies also bring their service centers here. With regards to the large-scale investments, I have my doubts that we will see another TSSK here, whether it's in Košice or in Bratislava or anywhere in between, right? In the next 10 years, to be honest. I think we will see more in the order of magnitude, maybe like between 500 and 1,000 people, but then focusing onto very specific topics, onto product management for a specific product line, an automation product or an infrastructure product or an application or something like this. So that's more of what I see rather than those big places like we have for TSystems, like we have for IBM, for Accenture, things like that. That's more of what I see. Yeah.
And understand. Thank you so much for the reply. One more time, highly appreciate your role you have played within the DSCF community. Thank you for that. And even the fact that you are not leaving the country, you are staying around. We definitely hope to meet you in person also and thank you in person in June if the entire situation is coming back to normal. Say we will be able to travel to Košice and meet you in person as well on behalf of the entire industry.
You know, I would go even further when it comes to the expectations, and I would hope to throw a farewell cocktail in Košice at some point before you.
Great. That's very, like it'll happen one way or the other. Like either it's lifted in June and then we can do it, or like it's not lifted and then I'm also going to be here because I won't get out, and then we can do it later. So
we have a good probability, I would say.
Exactly, I agree. Yes, exactly. Yeah.
There's one more question from Daniel Gaspar of Proudberry. Daniel, thank you for your thoughtful insights. Please, could you estimate what share of shared service industry is under risk of automation in the next 5 years? All the best in Hague for the future. Lovely city that is.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. It's further away from the mountains than Košice, but you have the sea. So we've taken a look at that, Daniel, and I can't talk for everybody, but I would say it's half. So for us, it's a little bit more than half of our current business. So yeah, and like I think I would guess, not as I said, I'm not as deeply in other shared service centers or business service centers, but I would guess it's a similar number there. So this is a real issue. This is the real threat. We have a good position, but it's something that we need to work on. We have a very good starting point, but if we not do something soon, then it's too late. Yeah.
Ronald, our executive director, has a question. Thanks, Daniel, for very insightful observations. I would like to come back to the cost-based advantage. You presented the current level at 1 to 2.2. What is your estimate of the critical level? Are we already over it?
No, we're not over it yet, and you can see that by the fact that there's, the industry is still growing, right? So it's not over yet. So there's still savings to be had by moving work here. You need to, obviously need to baseline those savings against the migration efforts that you have, right? And then afterwards the transactional effort. That's I think where we have an advantage over India, for example, because from cultural point of view, it's much easier to deal with people in Slovakia than with people in India. The critical level is probably somewhere under 2, 1.5 maybe. I wouldn't say it's more than that, because then, then the transaction costs that you have are compared to the savings that you do on the labor rate, they're pretty much going to be the same. So you won't do any savings anymore, and then you might as well put it back into, into cheaper parts of Germany or cheaper parts of France or Spain or whatever, So yeah, that's my estimate of the critical level. But we're not over yet, and as Daniel Gasper said, there's no time to lose. Indeed, we still have some time, but we need to use it because this is an advantage, and this is a strategic lever that is eroding. It's going away, guys. There's no denying that.
One from Milos Martončík of Deloitte. TSystems is an important pillar of BSC sector in Slovakia, but also a leader of IT Valley in Košice, also thanks to you. Do you consider TSystems ready to face the future you just outlined in our process in TSystems at point of no return, and it will be finished too soon?
Milos, no, it's just like a rhetoric question, right? We are facing the future, definitely. Like a lot of recent work with the team here has been on what I talked to you about here, right? It has been on how do we establish a functioning product lifecycle management. So this is everything what I showed you, from meeting the customer needs to developing, delivering, rolling out, and fine-tuning, over making sure that our future skills, it's called, so that our people have the skills that we need into the future, all the way to what we call branding, that we are an attractive employer both inside and outside in our region, but also way beyond that, because we need to attract experts. So yes, I think we are ready. We are working on that. Yeah, I'm quite happy with the work that the team is doing here. I think with this organization is in a good shape, and I'm handing it over in a good shape to my successor before any questions come, which I cannot talk about. But as soon as he's on board, I will obviously also introduce him here. I'll introduce him here because this is an important forum for anybody.
Did that answer your question, Milos?
Yes, it does. If I can chip in directly, can you hear me?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm asking more like a citizen of city of Košice, a person living in this region. TSystems is almost too big to fail. Not almost. It's too big to fail for this region. So for me, it's absolutely critical that companies like US Steel and TSystems are here, staying alive, and not just staying alive, but having bright future ahead of them, because this would be catastrophic for this region if 4,000 people would lose their jobs. And it never happens like gradually. It happens from day to day.
Exactly. So I think that's a valid point, and this comes, we won't close this place down like in 3 months or in 6 months or in 10 years. That's not how it works. It would be right, a death in 1,000 cuts. 5 people here, 10 people here, 100 people there, 20 people there, and to avoid that, I think that's exactly the point. That is where we need to start making sure that our people have the skills that they need, hence future skills. And we need to get away from the transactional work that we do today, because that is not the future. It pays the rent today, no question, and it will pay the rent probably 3-4 years into the future, but there is an end to this. And if we don't turn it around, if we don't find a future, like a future specialization, a future niche, say, and make it stick, that hence the stickiness, then in 10 years we might close the place down. And I'm a big fan of Schumpeter, creative destruction, so maybe there's something else coming. But I would rather have creative destruction in the company than in the region, And it's also hard for some of the people here in TSSK, because we are already looking at skills that will become obsolete. And that's hard for people that have those skills today and that do those roles today. But that's exactly the discussions that you need to have.
If I can maybe share my point of view, because I fully agree with whatever you said. We have to switch from cost centers to centers of excellence, if I put it this way, very simplistically. But this COVID crisis, let's put it this way, is, in my view, bringing a lot of opportunities. And if anybody was claiming that this particular service cannot be done remotely, now he cannot claim anything, because during this social distancing time, it is proven that almost everything can be done from home or from a distance, if the company was ready for this and if technology was working. So I'm expecting a rise in business service centers. Not exactly, this might buy us some time. Exactly. Because it's not really strategically correct to just rely on the fact that more and more services can be done from the center. But at least we are buying maybe some time to really reshift, change the focus, and really build the product and create that centers of excellence.
I agree there. It does buy us some time. It makes us more attractive as an employer also, because it's stable. But we need to use it. Yeah, indeed.
And thank you, Milos, also for the positive note of making the point of this also being a very interesting time for new opportunities. There is a question from Ronald. Again, this question makes my blood boil just so slightly, but thank you for that, Ronald. I think it's one that we really do have to address. Daniel, how about your cooperation with municipalities? Do they understand the needs of the private businessmen and the private sector? Košice is in direct competition with Brno, Krakow, and so on. Is the city council doing its best to offer competitive options and conditions?
Let me be very diplomatic here. I think you can always do more. I think you can do more. I can't talk for the rest. I can talk for our region. I think the cooperation with the Kraj has improved. It was a bit rocky in the beginning, but now it's improved. With the municipality, it is still quite difficult, and also quite difficult because we don't really understand each other, is my impression. So we don't have a whole lot of insight into what the priorities of the municipality are, and I'm not entirely sure that the municipality has a clear view and a clear understanding of what the priorities and the interests of one of the major taxpayers here are, right? And one of the major, and I'm not only talking to T-Systems, I'm talking to the whole industry, what the requirements of the industry are. So more dialogue, I think, would be a really good starting point in my view. That is something that would really help, and then we can take it from there. Yeah, and you're right, Ronald. I mean, we are in direct competition with Brno and with Krakow, and this is something where we need to do something, and that has not necessarily gotten better in the last year.
I'm sure Peter would like to jump in and say that Debrecen is a huge competitor for us as well.
But yeah. Daniel, let me ask very directly a question. What would be your suggestion? You know the local culture, you know the people. So what can we really do to make people understand that, it's for their benefit? Because, of course, your answer is not surprising, but you are just about to leave and you've been living in the city for 5 years. So you know the culture, you know the people, you know that Slovaks working for your company can be very, very productive, very useful, very smart, inventive, etc. So what is the problem? Many of these people, they know people who work for the city. So they are maybe graduates of the same schools. What can we really do to make them understand?
The first thing is, I think we need to go out more and talk about the stuff that's happening here. Like my usual joke is that quality of life in Košice is one of the best guarded secrets in Central Europe, and I know exactly what I'm talking about. So I moved here from London, so and if I have friends and stuff coming over, then they say, whoa, this is actually really nice, and you have the mountains close and all that stuff. Plus you have a thriving industry in here, which very few people know about. So bringing that out into the world, that is, I think that is a very, very important piece. And if you look at what we had in the past, we had the European capital of culture, we had the European capital of sports. This is what brought world here. But all of that has essentially ceased in the last years, or in the last year in particular. There's just no going out anymore. There's no representation or anything. And again, I think that is something where we need to intensify the dialogue over what's important to us versus where the municipality wants to go, what municipalities wants to go, and then we can help each other. And this is not like one hand washes the other or something like this, This is actually, we'll make this together a better place to work and live. Yeah.
Daniel, thank you. Looking at the clock, we are unfortunately running out of time, so allow me to end it with this. We understand, and you have very often mentioned that you are 50% German and 50% Swedish. I must say that we are very happy, all of us, and very lucky for the sense of humor coming from the Swedish side. But we are also very lucky to have 100% of you as a Košice person, which we appreciate very much. And thank you very much for your contribution in the last 5 years to the city, to the region, to TSystems, of course, but also to AmCham Slovakia. We do appreciate your support, and we really will miss you dearly, but thank you for the positive note of you remaining with us here in Košice for some more time, and hopefully we will be able to do a proper goodbye, which you absolutely deserve. Thank you everyone for joining us here today, and thank you very much, Daniel, for being with us.
Perfect. Thank you, everybody. And keep up the good work. I think you're doing an excellent work there to drive this industry. Thanks.
Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you,
all
Daniel.
the best.
Bye.
Thank
all
you.
the best. For our participants, this presentation might be found, hopefully it was recorded, and hopefully it will be found on our webpage very soon. So have a great day, everyone, and thank you for spending your afternoon with AmCham.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye. All the best. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Ernest, provokuješ vás?
Ja.
Na zárodke?
No tak jasné, to je najlepšie von.
Ukáž na výhľad. Veľmi pekné.
Púpavý.
Toto budeme musieť vyškrtnúť ten nárok, keď to bude na web. Čaute páni, ďakujem za diskusiu.
Majte sa pekne všetci, ahojte.